Hey everybody, it's CryptoBirb and welcome to today's episode, another episode of the Nest Show podcast. We are back on the track, guys, with amazing guests, with the amazing series full of knowledge, full of experienced traders, full of market insights and private suggestions, private tips, which led many people to huge success. And speaking of success, today's guest is Mr. Anderson, known as True Crypto 28 on Twitter, my dear friend and amazing trader, somebody who I truly look up to and admire out there for all that he shares. And we're going to talk about the markets. We're going to talk about some more private aspects as well for the trading and outside trading. And guys, I want to make sure you get enough time, space, and room for listening to what Mr. Anderson has got for us to say. Welcome on the show, buddy. What's good?
Good to be here, brother. I like the introduction. I should have you talk to my wife and tell her all those good things about me as well. So, but I'm doing great, thank you.
We've all been there, man. We've all been there. I love it. I love it. Yeah, tell me how's been 2022 treating you so far?
2022 has been good. I mean, 2021 was probably the worst year of my life for personal reasons. Nothing, everything outside of money. Money was fine, but just as far as
Uh,
some things that went on. So I welcomed 2022 with welcome arms. I was very happy to see it, and so far it's been pretty smooth. Things have been clean. I
mhm.
was looking for shorts from 66K down with only some mean revision longs, so it's been pretty simple. No real issues thus far.
Okay, got you, got you. Well, sorry to hear about your personal issues going on throughout 2021. It had definitely, uh, it had a lot of difficulties also, for me, for many people out there. So I think it's it's definitely, a lot of difficulties going on with the pandemic, with the health issues. So I really only hope that you're getting better at your personal issues and they are going to get covered and recovered perfectly fine in 2022 as much as you can get it done. And it's definitely interesting to hear a little bit more as much as you can reveal, of course, outside of trading in a couple of moments. But before we actually go to your more private insights, private tips, I want to hear and treat our viewers, listeners with your thoughts and overall take on the market outlook for March, let's say, because we're somewhere mid February almost. So how, like, what do the next days look like to you?
Right, exactly. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, just based on my style and my approach, that I developed, I could tell you about March on about February 28th. That's when I'll feel comfortable talking about March. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
I honestly am only concerned about what happens next. I do a pretty decent job of calling like the next three, four, five moves sometimes. But the way that'll happen is I'll say, hey, you know what? I think we're going here, and I might end up being correct on the end result. But really, after when I get done with step one, I usually have a completely different take with all the new data on what step two will look like. So
True.
that changes all along the lines. Now, in the end, hey, it's only up or down, right? So we end up getting, let's say we get higher, then hey, we were all right. We could say that. But if we lost money in between, it doesn't really matter. So I
Mm,
always focus on what has happened to the best of my ability so that I can make an educated guess on what's going to happen next. And if I see edge to that, I put some risk on. And I really keep it as simple as that. So, I mean, really at that point, I'll feel better, for February, what I would want to concentrate on is much more about, like, hey, what's going to happen in these coming weeks? Because I think we have some important tests coming. Are we going to push forward to
mhm.
52? That would make life a lot easier if Bitcoin wants to jump up towards 52. I think that makes everything smoother, but she doesn't like to always give us easy and smooth. So I do think there's some important tests pretty close by, even in that 41.5 range. Just looking at something as simple as the H4 200-day exponential moving average. Lose that again, you might put the bears in a position to feel empowered again. And then we might just see, where we're going to do as far as some horizontal tests of some important areas that we just kind of passed through. Because there was some clear demand that came in. So if we fall through some of those areas, well, obviously that's not good, right? You want to see the follow through, which we've seen a little bit so far. So I'm going to be looking for the test of these local springs that we see to see if they'll hold, because it's been a very different drop this time around. A very clean, in my opinion, on the higher time
True.
frames, but very different in the approach of
True.
how we came about. It's a
May I
very long
stop you there?
shakeout.
May I stop you
Absolutely.
there for a second? Because I can see you have your charts ready, and perhaps I think you could be uh, much more helpful for for those who are
Absolutely.
not familiar with the charts. Actually, get some charts display. Are you fine with playing some charts for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
Okay, let's get it done. It's displaying right now. Feel free to comment on
Yeah,
the
I mean,
magic out there.
just to give some context, I mean, that's sort of the idea. I was a little fortunate in that I think we should go backwards before going forwards. In that once we kind of lost this area, I tend to do a little bit of an early look when we lose some structure. So although I would say the important structure was lost down here, I'll take an earlier look sometimes at the loss of structure and see if we reject in that area. This is basic market structure stuff, but it's the things that most people kind of skip over. And I was immediately looking to say, hey, will this reject? Because a lot of times you'll lose an area like this and then reclaim it. We just did that actually the other day, which was positive. But in this situation, lost structure, rejected exactly the spot you don't want to lose. And then it was very clean from that point on, and just seeing we're just looking for exhaustion to short at various places. And I didn't play perfectly by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of times I was sleeping at the perfect entry or something along those lines. But I think it's important to show that. But then what happens is when it got a bit extreme, when you start now losing that 42 range, dropping down back into our previous high time frame, weekly, bi-weekly type support, you start to focus on the fact that we had that loss of demand. What needs to change for a bottom? I use something for bottoms. I use something very simple, which is I take a look at what I would call true relative strength, which is going to be Bitcoin versus the entire market. I know a lot of people like to look at Bitcoin versus ETH or something like that. I like to look at it versus the entire market. And I posted something like this, and it might be I'll reference it in a second. But normally, what happens is, from my experience, when we see bottoms, right, we'll see on H4 on the 4-hour chart, we'll see Bitcoin starts to lead. But I don't want it just to lead. I need Bitcoin to lead where it's above the 200 exponential moving average, and I'm happy to share this with anyone that's listening. Above the 200 exponential average, that's Bitcoin versus the market against its 200-day moving average. And I want to see price action in the same position. So a very quick review would say, all right, well, we flirted with that here, but price action was well below. We're not ready yet. That's a no. So the same thing happened again and again. And then finally, we started to see that. So I started to look, all right, it might be possible. Now I need a retest. The retest came in this area. And now it was more likely that we're at least attempting a bottom. A chart to kind of give everyone who's watching a very quick view of this would look something like this. When these happen on the upside, this would be green. That's when this took place. Red on the downside, once, twice. Green on the upside, red on the downside. And we can go on and on with this. Red, red, red. You can see how these, now I like it better for bottoms, but the point is you can still see it's effective for tops as well. Even after the COVID crash, once you go green, you normally stay green for quite some time. So it's highly effective. It doesn't mean you bottomed, but it shows you're attempting that. And it's really, the hit rate is pretty damn high, right? So even this one where we didn't bottom, you had one hell of a little run up, right? So it's the same thing here. Maybe we didn't bottom, we had one hell of a run up, and then the test will come. Same thing here, red drop, green rise, and that's all I care about. I'm trying to get edge with directional bias. So to kind of, I just thought that was important to give a little substance to what I'm about to speak about, which is these ultimate tests, because what I then want to see is I want to see the fact that there's a change in the context of how people are looking at this. Because on the way down, what happens is you find yourself in a position where the momentum traders are certainly looking for shorts, right? They have all the advantages. So it's important to also, even if you don't trade a certain way, I believe it's important to understand how's the guy that trades momentum trading? How's the guy that's price action only? How's the guy that trades Bollinger Bands trade? If you know these things, then you might understand like, hey, this is where I might get out. This is where there might be a trap, etc. And the number one thing I always want to stay aware of is how does the losing trader trade? Because that's where you're going to find the traps. That's ultimately my number one thing. I want to think, how's the loser trading? And when I say loser, I don't mean it as an offensive word. I just mean the losing trader in general. But that's going to be a key idea for me. So in this situation, the change is that we started to see some value buying come in, because why else would you be buying in these areas? There's no technical reason to do so other than maybe some support. Well, at this
Mm,
point, now you get high time frame support after you fell through a key support resistance, and we started to climb up. And now we start to see a change in this area on low time frames where there was more reasons. If you switch this to like a 1 hour, you can see very technical reasons as to why people would have bought here, etc. Well, on this 4 hour chart that I'm paying attention to, I want to see now that someone's going to be willing to step in and front run something like the 200 exponential moving average, right?
mm-hmm.
So I would like to see this hold. If it doesn't, then I believe in this situation, we're going to see a retest back to top side of this formation. And that ultimately will tell us more about where we're at. But if we do see this hold and then run off, you end up seeing a lot of these type of actions. I'll give you a little preview of what normally comes with this, and I can kind of just clear this out for a second. In these bottoming situations, you'll see that price comes up, all the moving averages cross, and then once we get a fair test, the next time it reclaims them, you're sort of off and running. And that happens time and time again at these bottoms, right? It doesn't really matter how big the bottom was, but same type of thing. Once you lose it, come back up, come back for the retest. Now we're ready. A lot of people, they always mess up with their moving averages. You know, they think, oh, the cross is what matters. No. The
Mm,
cross isn't what matters. The cross is an activator that says,
true.
look for something, right? So now that's what's going to let me pay attention. And the good thing is it works both ways, because you're saying, hey, if it holds, okay, I'm looking for bullish plays. But if it fails, that's also valuable information. You had the opportunity to step in at that point, and there should have been a reason to move forward. So that inability to hold at that level tells you flat out the demand isn't there, and therefore I'm certainly going to be looking for bull exhaustion to short in that scenario. So I'm always in a position of, hey, I want to stay open to everything. I always say nothing's written, right? We just can't measure the demand picture ahead of time. We can anticipate it. We can have a decent idea. We can use some indicators to give us that. But that's ultimately where we're at. And I think this test is pretty close. I don't think we're going to go too far. I think this is in that region of 41.5. You can naturally swing failure under it or something along those lines, but
Mm.
you don't want to lose that with any conviction. If you did, I'll be shorting the next week bounce after that back to the downside just to see where the buyers are going to step in.
Got you. Yeah, honestly speaking, like in all extreme honesty, this is one of the best explanations and literal workshops on the moving averages that I think I have ever heard. So well done to you, buddy, on that. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers will heavily appreciate that. And well, I think, just to comment on what you mentioned over the crossovers, what many people tend to forget, just like you said, that they are rarely ever like the crossovers, the bullish crosses, the bearish crosses, death crosses, golden crosses. It's all just an event to make you pay attention towards certain solutions, just like you referred to it, right? It's not like you see a golden cross on a daily chart, on a weekly chart, and you just immediately open up, your app on the phone and just smash smash the buy buttons and everything. Instead, it is just a kind of like a direction pointing, right? It shows you, okay, that short-term average crossed over a longer-term average, which, for instance, tells you that there is some short-term trajectory prevailing over some other long-term different trajectory, right? So it's very interesting how you put it. And speaking of still, the market outlooks, um, you know, do you kind of like care? And if you do, can you reveal if, in your opinion, the Bitcoin peak stops are in? Like, are we going past $70,000? Are we going lower than 30,000? Do you have any takes on that? Just out of curiosity.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a great question, right? It's the question that everyone wants to know about. It's the question and the type of Twitter posts that you can make that are very popular and everyone cares about. That's how you get 10,000 likes, right?
True, true,
And
true.
it's fun to do, and I think it's great for like what we're doing. We're having a discussion, right? Two traders are having a discussion
Yeah.
about what do you think? Hey, let's bounce some ideas off each other. In the bigger picture, does it matter? I don't think it does. But I would say that in this case, it's super complicated, right? Because Bitcoin has always been a risk on type of asset. It just has, right? I mean, there's no really denying that. And we've been in the greatest risk on bull market in history, right? So that's always occurred, and then it's had some scenarios where it's broken away from that, but really only in short term to the upside, in long term to the downside, right? So we had the Bitcoin bear market, stocks were doing just fine during that time, right? So you have a lot of these situations because it's such a young asset. So I think a lot of that has to do with that macro picture that's very hard to understand, because what's going on, I believe, in the stock market is that everyone's adjusting to the fact that, look, rate hikes are coming. They have to come, right? And basically, I'm just kind
Do
of,
they? Do they?
yeah, yeah.
That's the question.
Well, there's no good answer, right? There's never been a good way to unwind this situation, but so maybe I
True.
shouldn't say they have to come, but they're definitely gonna come, right? You're
Nah,
creating a weird
I'm
environment.
just pulling it like there. Don't worry.
No.
But
You make a good point, because there isn't a good answer to this, because they created the problem of their own. But one thing I would
it's
kind of
not
reference
obvious at
to,
all. Not
yeah,
obvious at
yeah.
all to my mind, at least.
Yeah, what I would point out, I mean, kind of again to go back in time, and again, I'll reference some tweets or something to kind of discuss it. So if you go back, like when the pandemic started, everyone was saying it's the Great Depression Part Two, right? I mean, we can kind of pull some of these up, right? So, Prechter, everyone knows Prechter, the Elliott Wave guy. I don't have anything against
Mm.
Elliott Wave. It's not for me, but the point is, this guy's been calling, the 35 years the end of the bull market, and he called that
Yeah,
during
classic.
the greatest bull market in history, right? So he's missed the whole thing. And then, by the way, at the end, they're going to say he was right. Nothing against him, but he's
Yeah,
missed a
yeah,
3,500% run up. And that's what was
yeah.
going on, back in March 5th, right when the pandemic started, for most of societies. And, I'm not tooting my horn on this stuff. It's just more about understanding the Fed and understanding, money supply. March 10th,
Mm.
2020, I said stimulus packages are coming, right? It's just a little joke. We put out these tweets to be fun, but stimulus packages are coming. There was no thought of stimulus package back then. I just know how our government works, right? March 12th, 2020. I've been in the financial market since day one. Nobody can kick a can down the road like the United States. We're in the thick of this adventure, but we will overstimulate and it will work,
Mm.
right? And it has worked, right?
Yo,
There's
what a
no other
good
way to look
take.
at it. Well, I mean, that's just the reality of how this market works. So going back to 1929, you start seeing this charts where everyone was putting out the Great Depression charts right when the pandemic hit. And by the way, nothing against them. You should always have that alternative view anyway. So I would say if you didn't have some view like that, then you were doing yourself a disservice. So I have no problems with anyone being wrong ever. I'm wrong every day. So I don't want it to seem that way, because I know someone will misinterpret. But what I put, different universe from 1929, the Fed literally engaged in deflationary policy from 1929 to 1933. They actually decreased the circulating dollars by 1/3. 1/3, right? That's
A
insane.
lot.
And that's what created the Great Depression, right?
True.
However, the Fed had, now this is April 21st, 2020, the Fed's been more proactive as ever in increasing the money supply, right? Which is, that started then, and then as you know, they increased it by 40%. Sun indicator, this is back in May. For the last 2 months, we've been talking about the sun indicator. This is just a little joke, but the joke is this: if the sun rises, buy stocks. Why? Because they're flowing money in, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm getting to a point here, and
Yeah.
I'll explain stocks, right? So I put stocks here in June: unlimited QE, PPP, unlimited unemployment on steroids, stimulus, et cetera.
Yeah.
As a trader, endless opportunities in traditional markets should excite you, right? So we just knew that it was going to be easy stocks. This reminds me so much of 1999.
Mm.
Tremendous imbalances everywhere, et cetera, influx of new money, Fed stabilizing everything, no trading fees, right? So
True.
all popped up. And then this one, after that wasn't bad enough, August 27th, this, in my opinion, was the biggest news that was released, the cause of all of this, right? What did the Fed say? They announced it. The central bank formally agreed to a policy of average inflation targeting. That means it will allow inflation to run moderately, quote in quotations, right? Moderately above the 2% goal for some time. They admitted it. They admitted what they were doing. What does that mean? So basically, they put all these programs in place. It was a total opposite scenario of what the Great Depression was, because they're protecting the elite, they're protecting their own, they're protecting their money. Inflation hurts who? Everybody, but really the people without money more than anything else. So
Yeah.
that was kind of written. So why do I bring this all up? Because I do believe the easy money is behind us. The easier plays were behind us, but I do have a hope. I do have a hope that we enter into a stock pickers market for a while, because I can tell you that from experience. If I just go back in time, um,
Mm.
back in the day, with anytime we had a rate hike cycle, right, that I've seen, I've been doing it about 23, 24 years. So I've never seen inflation like this. So that's the caveat that could be different. But
Mm.
any time that we've had a hike cycle, from what I remember, and maybe my memory is just, I haven't looked it up again, but maybe it's missing. But I remember always we would have these struggles because you go through the rebalancing, the recycling. But when the cuts began, the market started climbing, right? The bad news is priced in, good, you're putting them in. And why are you doing it? Why are you raising rates? Because you're trying to slow down an engine that's just going, you're running like a Tesla Plaid at 160 miles an hour. It's
Mm.
insane, right? So they're trying to slow things down. So I would think that, yes, many companies are going to get crushed. It's terrible for consumers. You have a lot of type of issues that are in play there. At the same time, you are creating this situation to where once they start hiking, I do think that we're still going to see an extended period of time where you're going to see a climb in the market. Hopefully that's
Yeah.
positive for Bitcoin. But my greater point in all this, and I didn't mean to take this so long, is that here's what Bitcoin believers have to hope for. And it's a hope that we've had for a long time, which is what we really want is a decoupling, right? We want a decoupling from this risk on, risk off thought process. We want Satoshi's vision to be actually coming to light in that you have this quote unquote inflation hedge, that we're not controlled by legacy markets. And that's going to come in the form of hodlers basically taking up so much supply. You can never measure demand. So the drops will still be vicious when they happen. When it dries up, and that's what it is. But if there's enough people holding that are believing, that are saying, I will never sell, then when that demand comes in, price is going to go through the roof. And even with these
Mm.
formations, we still have targets, reasonable things like P and F targets, which are too long to explain, of like 180,000 minimum for this cycle, minimum. And that's been
Nice.
showing up in all of these type of, whether it's going back to the 2018 range, or even if we look at this localized range that we've been through in the last year, that's 180 plus if that plays out. But again, you can never measure demand. That's why I'm always going to be step to step and looking at what's happening right now, and then I'll decide on what the next play is.
Yeah, this is wow. This is a lot to take in. This is a lot of knowledge to take in. But these are true words, and truer words are rarely ever spoken out there, to be honest. I think you've made a great point, about, well, the overall situation we are in, right? For the past decades, you would see nothing but quantitative easing, and the money to aggregate supply, for example, increasing, just for instance, heavily by about 30-40% over the course of just last 2 years, which is pretty insane. For those
Insane.
who actually struggle, to give it a proper context, we're talking about 1/3 of ever printed money to be printed, like in terms of dollar, to be printed in the past 2 years, right? Especially in the COVID crash year. So it is unprecedented event, and it's funny enough that you're pulling out all of these posts, from 2020. It's showing how actually correct you are, and congratulations on it. And it is just, I think, showing the irony of the times we are living in, and it is like bringing back, I wanted to say memories, but I wasn't living then. The Great Depression, right? 1929,
Yep.
32. That the time of the Great Depression was actually, like, paradoxically healthy, right? You would have a lot of companies dying. You would have a lot of issues, of course. The politicians, just losing their seats. Now, you would see a lot of, I should say, struggles over there, as the entire market globally was taken back then. A lot of heat, a lot of like crushing, but eventually it gave the space for something that, well, arguably, was even larger, right? And well, to my mind, if I look at it, like, I think that this vehicle, is going so fast. You just gave a reference to this, to Tesla, right? Like, in my opinion, it's just growing too fast. Like, inflation right now, even if it's averaged, if it's supposed to be averaged, it's going to be so hard to actually slow it down back to 2%, because by slowing 2%, it means that from 7.5% per the new CPI readings, you will need to go literally below zero to make it any worth going. So it's wild. It
Absolutely.
seems to it seems to be that like the way I look at it, right, is, you know, that these are just kind of like just shortened ticks, you know, that they would try to poke with this stick to just kind of like let a bit of the air out of the balloon, but the balloon is still going to get bigger in, well, perhaps expectations on some overall purge in the next couple of years maybe. But it's super interesting that the points that you mentioned, and I highly suggest everybody, you know, listening to this podcast, to this episode of the Nest Show podcast with Mr. Anderson, to actually, you know, get back to these tweets that he's just shared. I think they're full of wisdom and honesty and humor, and they're real. They're real. And speaking of that tweets, speaking of the tweets, and moving more towards well, some more philosophical questions, you know, perhaps outside trading too. Like one of the tweets that I've just seen, you know, on your timeline is I quote, in the year 1999 I pulled 125x to my trading bankroll and I was sure that I was a trading genius. In the year 2000 I lost every single penny of that dollars, including my original bankroll and my confidence. But my story didn't end there. No, this was where my journey began. Never quit. And damn, goddamn, how positive and how inspiring that quote is. Tell me a little bit more about your quotes. You have so many amazing quotes, so many amazing points you make on a daily basis out there on Twitter. How you do it? Where do you take them from?
Well, the first thing, just based on what you just brought up, the point about that is it's just it's real, right? It's so real, and I want people to know that I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty good trader. I don't need to be the best or anything like that, but I kind of used this example before. Like I'm not LeBron James, but I'm in the NBA. I know that I'm good and everything I have in life is from this, and I'm happy and blessed for that. But I also want people to know that for a long time I was terrible. I was terrible. I wasn't dumb. I was actually very smart. I was arrogant. And the worst thing that well, maybe in hindsight it's the best thing, but at the time the worst thing was that I was entering into this bull market, and I felt like, hey, I can't go wrong. I know what I'm doing. I'm great. I'm 125x up. I'll soon be, I'll do that again. I'll do that. I was shopping for yachts. I'm not joking. I was a kid shopping for yachts, which is more ridiculous when you realize that it's the year 1999 and I didn't buy a thing. And I think that's an important part of the puzzle. I did not withdraw $1. I never withdrew a dollar. So I literally lost every penny. It's not like I made 125x and at least got a new car out of it. No, I had my old little truck that I had in high school, and I was still driving that thing for years because I'd lost all my money, even though I made it back. So the idea is it was humbling, and I'm glad because I do think that had I learned during that process and became uber rich back then, I probably would have grown up to be an a-hole, right? I thank God that didn't happen because I didn't want that. I had some
Mm,
elements there that would have made me think that it was all about me and that I might do something good. So I want everyone to know that if you're struggling, I suck too. I really did, right? So I mean, a lot of people say, oh, you're a trading guy. First of all, you're probably seeing me better than I am, right? So just understand that we all make mistakes. We all get off sides at times. The idea is just as long as you can manage your risk, and when you catch that run, you're going to be fine, and that's the good thing. But at the same time, just don't quit, right? You have to be investing more than ever at this point in time in life because we're all now going to be trying to battle inflation. And the only way to do it, the best way to do it, is going to be understanding directional bias in the market. So that's the main reason. As far as the other quotes that you mentioned, I do want to, I try to be as positive as possible. I understand that mental health is a big thing. I understand. I see a lot of people going through it. I'm in a pretty good place, thank God. But I also know that, hey, the best things in life are free, right? I want everyone to understand that money is great, but I will give up every penny that I have to keep the things that are free, my wife, my children, right? My faith, things of that nature. So that's what most of it kind of comes from. Like, hey, if I have this platform, I've thought about leaving Twitter many times because I think a lot of it is ridiculous, right? But at the same
mm,
time, I say, all right, I have an audience. That's a blessing. Let me speak. Let me be myself at least. Sometimes I'm probably out of line or whatever it might be. But at the same point, if I do get positive messages from it, so I feel like, hey, you know what? I'm helping someone. I need to be less political, but I'm just afraid. I point out political things just because of the fact that, like, hey, I can see that life is changing. They're trying to control you guys. You know what I mean? It's not
yeah,
Republican or Democrat political. I don't like either side. It's just,
gotcha.
hey, you're a free soul, and don't let these people feel any less. But
Mm.
regardless, I should stop more some of that. But
I,
I just want to
I
keep
I
things
I
light.
understand you very well.
Yeah, I want to keep things light. I want to keep it positive. I want people to know like you're a real person and you're not defined by your money. You're not defined by your trading skills or anything like that. You can still have a great life. I assure you. You know, some of the happiest people on the planet are the poorest people on the planet. So stay
Oh,
focused
true.
on that above anything else. Stop chasing the extra zero. When I say that, I mean like you're always going to want more. No one wants $1 million. They want more. They don't want 10 million. They want more. They don't want 100 million. They want more. So if that's the
Always,
case, fine.
always.
Chase the more, but enjoy now. Be present in the moment and enjoy what you have and appreciate it. Because if you don't appreciate what you have now, you won't appreciate the 10 million. You won't appreciate the 100 million. And that's just a summary of it.
Yeah, this is like every single word you bro put up on this show is just a gold mine of wisdom. It's rarely ever that I've recorded as podcast as rich in wisdom as this one. It's
Thank
just
you,
mind
brother.
blowing. It's just mind blowing, and I wish so many people actually understood what you were saying. Uh, leaving all the politics aside, because of course some people may agree, the others would not. I happen to agree, but who cares?
Exactly.
Leaving all aside, I do already feel that you've mentioned also a lot about you revealed, like it or not, a lot of about your private kind of like edge, that you use in trading, both in trading and in life, right? Is it Do you happen to have any specific word perhaps for your edge? Like if I ask you what is your one thing that is the edge both for trading and your personal life, like can you give any reference specific?
The edge that I'm better at in trading than in life, and I need to put it in life too, is my edge for trading is, and I have a lot of edge, of course, and I can, maybe I can give some edge on a chart, if we want to.
Mhm.
But the point is, as far as basic that might apply to both, is understanding that I don't know anything. We might have talked about this on the previous podcast. We
Mm.
don't know what's going to happen. And that's the cardinal sin in trading, whether people want to realize it or not. We have a desire to be right. We want to feel like I knew this was going to happen. So, and I say it too. We all say it. I knew we were going to go up. I knew price was going to
Everything is obvious in the
69,000.
hindsight.
Yeah,
Everything
yeah,
is
yeah.
obvious in the end.
But the idea is that to understand that bias blinds you. That bias is leading you to an eventual disaster. It might not be now. It might not be a year from now. It might be 20 months, 18 months, 2 years. But a big loss has your name on it, and it's waiting for you because it already sees your bias, and you're gonna believe. Now I know I'm so good. It's gonna happen. It happened to me in 2009, early 2009. I crushed it in 2008. It was my best year ever. I believed I was better than the market. I was going to be Rockefeller. I literally believed that. And I lost every penny, almost, not every, but almost my entire 2008 profits on one trade in 2009 because I was
Yeah, I remember
married
you
to an
mentioned that.
idea. Yeah, yeah, I knew it. I knew it in my mind. I knew what was going to happen, and I was wrong. And not only was I wrong, I held on, and I was so prideful I couldn't even take a 70% loss. It went to 100% because there was options. But the idea is
Mm.
that I put that is the key. Just you don't accept the fact that you don't know, and the moment you do that, you can manage risk. And it's the same thing for life. If I can accept that, hey, keep an open mind. Maybe I don't know everything in life. That's going to help me as well to take things in, to actually listen, to respect other people, things of that nature. And then from there, still form my own ideas and make my own decisions. But that's a path that I think is going to lead everyone in terms of edge.
Yeah, this is. Uh, I don't want to be a broken record, man. This is a gold mine. This is a gold mine of some golden experience that everybody could actually benefit with, benefit from just listening to it.
I hope
Um,
so.
I just want to kind of like touch the base very very quick. About your more private hobbies. Do you have any hobbies? What do you actually happen to do outside of training?
Sure, sure. I mean, I'm working out, playing sports, so I need to do more of both. Recently I haven't been as active in that, but there's no greater joy for me than like spending time with my wife, my children, my family. I do love to ski, snow ski. Uh, I
Cool.
love to watch high level football, American football. Of course, I'm fascinated with charts, right? So that love, thank God, has never left
Now
me. There
leave
was
the
times
charts
that would have
aside.
popped that
No,
up.
no charts. No
I'd be
charts. Leave the
lying.
charts.
I'd be lying if I didn't. But you're right. Except but that's the key. And then anytime for anyone that has for people that don't have children, they don't get it. They won't understand. That's fine. But it's like a secret society. I mean, ultimately, once you do have kids, It's not that, hey, you got an advantage over those that don't. No, no, no. The people that don't have kids, you got a great life, and that's cool too. But once you do, it is something that you just simply can't put into words and explain. To see that life that you made, that you have a part of, to see that innocence, to see all the stuff that you have an ability to try to play a part in and mold. It's the beauty is beyond belief. So I take all the joy in the world from them and just cherish every moment.
I love it. I love it. This is well, this is something that I definitely had not asked you about it before, right? So I definitely appreciate you opening up about your hobbies, about how you spend the time with the family, how you spend the time also and enjoy watching the American football. Um, as well as skiing. I do snowboard myself. I wish I actually had more time. I wish I had had more time over the past few 2 3 years maybe. I think the last time I went snowboarding it was on Slovakia, which is nearby Poland, right on the south to it. We went to the Tatry Mountains, and there's a place called Hopok, just the way it sounds. Uh, and that was the last time I actually was snowboarding. I think it was 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So
Oh man, get out there. Life is too short. You better
three
get back out
years.
there.
Man, I need to escape my cave finally. this is this is insane. Yeah, but this is very hard, for a lot of traders, I assume, and to find the right balance, and finding this right balance sounds like a good skill of yours already. And knowing of that, Mr. Anderson, my good friend, I want to start slowly wrapping up the show by asking you about your favorite traders, analysts, books. Do you happen to have any that you particularly look up to?
Yeah, I never got a lot from books. That doesn't mean there's not plenty of great ones. It's just early on in my trading, I read a bunch of books, and obviously from the explanation I gave you earlier, it didn't help me since I lost everything. So I would tell
Mm,
people that the best trading education you can have is just stare at charts for 10,000 hours, and that's going to help you dramatically. But traders for sure. I mean, Livermore, I absolutely love. I absolutely love Gann. I think Gann's a unique figure in that we don't really know a lot about his techniques, but what I really like
mm.
is something like Gann quotes tell you everything you need to know about the guy. The guy was as disciplined as it came. He definitely had edge. He understood directional bias and things of that nature. Love Wyckoff. Love the mindset. He really opened my idea. Excuse me. He opened my mind to the thought process of looking at charts and trading differently by thinking about things like effort and results. To understand, like, hey, when a certain effort is made by bulls or bears, then they need
He was
to
a
accomplish.
pioneer. He was a pioneer of his
Unbelievable, yeah.
time.
And you think about him, the way a lot of people give Gann a hard time, but because that's just modern society.
Mm,
But Wyckoff's
gotcha.
favorite trader in history was Gann, right? Because he tagged along with Gann, and he was mind blown by his ability. But yeah, he was
Always
really a
the same
pioneer.
story.
Yeah, he
Always
was
the
a
same story.
pioneer, and right, exactly. That's what we deal with now on Twitter. But he was definitely a pioneer, and thinking about just the way he looked at things like context, understanding context. It's really thinking about trading on a different level, and it's really hard for anyone that's learning to trade to even think that way. But eventually,
True.
once you get the basics down, you begin to see like, oh, okay, this is what's going to be key to understanding to get a little bit of edge in the pivot points, right? Because everyone's great in trends, but to understand like how you get a decent edge. No one's going to be amazing at pivots, right? Especially high time frame trend changes, which most people shouldn't even mess with. But you
Mm.
can get some edge by thinking more about context and things like that. So I completely love that. As far as Twitter, believe I can tell you about most of my real favorite traders aren't on Twitter. Guys that I grew up around and respect. They're that might not be very well known that are just amazing, mind blowing type of traders. But on Twitter, there's so many great ones as well. Guys like yourself that are consistently on it. I love this guy,
Appreciate you.
Sven. Absolutely, Sven Henrik. The Northman trader. He's
Yeah.
great. Guys like Gunnar, Shark, Castillo Trading. These guys keep me
True.
motivated and aware that the youth are coming for me. So I know I need to stay on top of it.
Great.
Scott Melker, as I mentioned, he's a guy that likes to claim he's not such a good trader, but in reality, he's extremely disciplined. You can see why he has such success because he sticks directly with that plan. And Bessa usually kills it, and there's a lot more. Recently I've noticed Trader One SZ, I think his name is. He's someone that's
SZ,
been
you
very
say?
SC, yeah, Trader. Is that it? I think
SZ.
it's
Good,
Trader
good, good
Trader SC,
lad.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's very talented as well. But there's so many I'm leaving out, so I don't want anyone that got left out to think anything else. But
True.
I like, my thing is, if I see someone do well, one, I want to compliment the fact that they're doing well because you don't ever want to say, oh, that guy sucks unless he sucks, right? There's a lot of people that are terrible, but the guys that do well, man, look at them and just see it and respect it, and don't you dare say anything negative. Have an element of respect and say, hey, I want to get to that level, and who knows, you might even strike up a conversation with them or study them and pick up what little element that they might have that you don't. So I think that's the key for anyone to kind of understand, because it's natural, especially in today's society, to have this idea where you want to down somebody instead of realizing like, hey,
Mm.
maybe they figured out something a little bit different. Because I think in this game, you want to be a forever student and continue to pick up little bits of the puzzle to help yourself out.
Yo, you should write a book, man. You should write a book. All these words, it's just the transcription alone would be top bestseller. I promise. This is insane. I can only agree with what you just said, and I really do it with my all honesty on site. Uh, and narrowing, towards the end of a show, I definitely want to leave our listeners and viewers with some golden tips. So if you were to give your final takeaway, just one tip, one suggestion takeaway, golden takeaway, and for the listeners to leave them with today, what would that be?
Oh, the golden tip is so easy. The golden tip is never quit. That's the real secret, right? I think I made a post on that recently where,
You did.
someone will do 4 to 6 years of college to get a degree, and we can argue how helpful that degree is for many people, but they'll get one downturn in the market and they give up on trying to learn in the trade, right? Which is crazy, right? So the secret is it's going to be hard. It will give you life changing money, freedom, time, anything you want it to give you once you make it. So why would you ever possibly give up? Some might take a year, some might take 2 years, some might take 10 years. I got a guy that I used to mentor, right? And this is his words. He used to say that he was awful for 10 years, right? He was a fairly successful guy already, but now after some time, he's a multimillionaire, and the guy is awesome. He does trade. He shows trades that I'm super impressed by. That I'm thinking like, damn, how did I miss that, right? So, and that credit doesn't go to me, right? He was just missing a few key elements. So I tell people like take a rule-based approach and practice. The other thing you talked about quotes, you have to bet to be in the game, right? If you lose all your money, you can't place bets. That's an old school, thing that just makes you understand like I can put money in, but I can't lose my stack. So start small. That's the key. Start small, learn, because that's a golden rule. And you want to minimize your risk. Take smaller positions with wider stops while you're learning. Journal all your trades. Make sure you learn from every loss. I mean, that's such a key. You're paying for that loss, right? So make sure that loss is a lesson, and make sure you only pay once. You lost a
I
trade due
love it.
to a key mistake, right? So if you lose due to a key mistake, that should be your lesson. And you want to make sure that it teaches you something so that you can create something that's systematic in your approach that keeps you from that devastating mistake again. So that's something that I would tell everyone. And just if you keep pounding the table of that, you're going to learn the nuances, and there's going to be all those aha moments. The aha moments come always. I still get aha moments, right? So you're going to see one after the other. Aha, I was never looking at it that way. I should have. And you'll forget things and you'll come back to it. That's right. I should have. I lost my view on market structure, which should always be the very first thing I'm looking at, right? So that's going to be the golden rule. And then for those people, if you happen to be just starting, always trade with the direction of the trend. Don't dare try to mix it up until you get to a point to where you're an accomplished trader. Trade with the trend. You're going to be so much better off. You'll miss the tops. You'll miss the bottoms. You'll catch the fat part in the middle with a big smile. And that would be my golden tip for anyone to take away.
Yeah, a never hit golden monster tip from Mr. Anderson. This has been one of the most, I should say, awing and inspiring, sessions, podcasts I have recorded for quite a long time, and I so much appreciate it. And just on top of what you mentioned and what you said and shared with our listeners and viewers, I want to quote and perhaps close this show with the quote of yours from today's tweet, which goes, open quote, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. It's all a loop, but as long as you never give up, just like our friend True Crypto 28 note on Twitter, as Mr. Anderson, Sure, I think that as long as you do never quit, you keep getting better and better if you keep learning too. So, with all the knowledge, with all the gold mine of experience and thoughts, and amazing streamline of tips shared by Mr. Anderson, I want to thank you to everybody who is listening for this to this podcast, and I want to thank you on top of everything to Mr. Anderson for coming over for today's Nest podcast show. Thank you so much, buddy, for coming over.
Thank you, brother. It was fun. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
I love it. I love it so much. That's all, folks, for tonight. Make sure you actually hit the subscribe button, smash the likes as well. And we are coming with the new podcast releases every week. Be there on the next shows. God bless and cheers.